Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Theresa Martin. I am the secretary of the Kentucky State Beekeepers Association, and I'm the president of my local bee club. I'm starting my master beekeeper certification at Cornell University starting in January. And I am here to present to you tonight on precision beekeeping. I'd like to explain a little bit about my background, and then we'll go ahead and I'll launch into the presentation. I've been keeping bees for only 4 years, so no doubt a lot less time than many of you. My first year I had 2 colonies, my second year 11, my third year 17, and my fourth year 24 colonies. I do practice natural beekeeping, as Jake put in the profile that he published, a la Tom Seeley. I follow a lot of his approaches that he wrote in his book, The Lies of Bees. Maybe some of you have read that. And using beekeeping methods that focus on healthy, productive bees. In my 4 years as a beekeeper and now 24 colonies, I've never had a colony die. I've never had a colony abscond, and I've never had to do a combine to save a weak colony. Now, I realize this 100% survival is not sustainable. And I'll be honest, I'm just as curious as anybody to see how long I can keep this up with my bees. But I'm sharing those results with you because the entire time I've been keeping bees, I've always used precision beekeeping, and I use the temperature sensors in all of my colonies. It's just one of the tools in my beekeeping toolbox, and it's always been a tool I've used. I've never kept bees without it. So I am humbly here to share my experience with precision beekeeping with you in the hopes that you find some value in what I've learned, and maybe you can apply it to your own beekeeping. So what is precision beekeeping? It's employing technology to improve colony outcomes. And if you've been reading American Bee Journal or Bee Culture, you've probably heard and read about precision beekeeping, but it's basically these 3 steps here. It is data collection, data analysis, and then application. So data collection means you take measurements and you gather data about the internal behavior and methods and things going on inside the colony as well as in the environment. So these measurements, there's really the 3 most common ones are temperature, humidity, and weight. But there's all sorts of other stuff that you can collect. There's cameras, there's sound, there's vibration. I even know a beekeeper who's doing things, she's actually tagging her drones with RFIDs and taking measurements that way. So there's all sorts of data collection options here as well as out in the environment. But then you have to take that data and combine it with expert knowledge about bee biology, season, what's going on in the environment, so you can draw some conclusions. And this bee biology is really the fun part. This is everything we have ever learned about bees. So it's brood cycles, it's development times, it's the fact that it's a superorganism, it's swarming behavior, it's nectar flows and dearths, and all the physics about thermodynamics and thermoregulation, and all that stuff comes into play. And then the last step is application. So you take all this and you have to take action to improve colony performance. If you're not going to do something better about, either improving health or productivity of your bees, this is kind of all just a waste. And, you'll hear beekeepers say, well, that precision beekeeping is just a bunch of gadgets and it's of no value. And that is absolutely true if you don't do number 3. And here's a resource down here to get more information on precision beekeeping, especially the academic sources at the end. So what is it not? Precision beekeeping is not a substitute for well-planned and well-executed inspections. Over-reliance can hinder your development of being able to identify diseases and pests. You can't do that with an external sensor. You might get an indication something is wrong, but you're not going to be able to learn to do these things if you don't get into your colonies and do inspections. What I would offer is that with precision beekeeping, your inspections are actually better. They're more well-planned and probably better executed because you already have, without ever getting into the colony, some idea of what you should expect to see. So you can hone in on it faster, and then you can spend your time doing other things. And I'll show you this as we go on when we get into these examples, but it's not an excuse to not get in your colonies. All right, so we're gonna focus on temperature. As I mentioned, there's lots of things you can measure, but temperature is the one we're gonna focus on for really 3 reasons. One is there's all sorts of stuff that you can detect about the state of the colony and the behaviors that are occurring based on temperature. And here's some good academic research if you want to read up on what some of the academics are saying about temperature and the use of it. But there's really 4 things that that we can look at that temperature can tell us. And the first 2 are queen laying and brood rearing. And the second is winter survival. Both of these are useful related to temperature because of thermoregulation. So everybody probably already knows thermoregulation is the way the superorganism maintains the temperature inside the cavity and around the cluster and around the brood, regardless of what's happening outside. And that's thermoregulation. It's when they self-regulate the temperature inside the cavity. And queen laying and brood rearing, the workers thermoregulate the brood nest at near a constant 95 degrees Fahrenheit through heating and cooling activities. And this 95 is a range, and I'm going to show you this. And I'm going to show you how this sensor detects this. And we're not going to spend time on how, the biology and all the behaviors and the mechanisms that the bees use to heat and cool the brood nest, but they're masters at it, and they've got all sorts of methods that they use. They're masters, the bees and the superorganism are masters at AC, heating, cooling, and dealing with humidity. They're super great at it. Now, in the context of this presentation, I'm going to use the term laying queen as a proxy for the presence of brood. We all know they are not one and the same. You can have a queen stop laying and there will still be brood present for 21 days after she's stopped laying. And the bees will thermoregulate that brood depending on how much there is, and the sensor will pick that up. But you're gonna see a lot of, I've got 4 examples that demonstrate this here. And then winter survival, of course, is very tied to temperature. The workers thermoregulate the core of the winter cluster when there's no brood at approximately 85 degrees through heating activities. And we know that as you move from the core of the cluster towards the mantle, the outside, that temperature is cooler. Note the bees do not warm the cavity and make no attempt to do so. And again, I think we all understand this as beekeepers, but we're going to use this, and I'm going to show you a bunch of examples on how this comes into play and how you can use it to your advantage using temperature in these sensors. So those are the first 2. The second 2 related to temperature being key to colony activity are swarming and colony stressors. So swarming, there's a nice swarm on a slide I caught this spring. So what happens is, and the way we can detect swarming is just prior to swarming, there's a 4 degree Fahrenheit approximately increase, and it's a spike up in temperature. This is thought to be the departing bees warming up their flight muscles just before they exit. The approximately 30 to 70% of the bees that exit with a queen, whether she's the mother queen or a virgin queen, it's thought to be the departing bees all warming up their flight muscles. And I'm going to show you an example of this. And this one's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. All right, and then there's colony stressors. So when the colony is stressed, whether it's through a varroa mite treatment or robbing, there is a spike, or there can be a spike in temperature that we can detect from outside the colony using these temperature sensors. And yes, this is a bear, and this is one of my hives. This is called Tower Hive. This actually, this picture is a couple of years old. That bear is still there, and he has not bothered this hive. So I'm hopeful that I'm going to have this good luck and continue. And I probably ought to say somewhere along the way, all these slides and all this material is my own, except where noted. So that's my bear, and that's my still alive hive. All right. So what is Broodminder? All right, so before I get too far in here, I want to say very clearly, I am in no way affiliated with Broodminder. They don't pay me or compensate me for any of what I am sharing with you. I'm only sharing this because I think it's some rock solid, useful stuff that I think beekeepers would like to know about. And I'm kind of what you might call a super user for them. So that's why I am sharing this with you, but they are not paying me or helping me in any way with, with compensation. All right, so there is, Broodminder is one application of precision beekeeping technology. I guess, let's see. Are you guys seeing this on your screen? All right. That's what Broodminder is. It's just one application. And Broodminder focuses on three things: temperature, humidity, and weight. And it syncs with your smartphone. I'm going to show you all this. And they also provide alerts and graphs and analysis, and they contribute to worldwide citizen science. So I don't know about you, but whenever I get to contribute, my data gets to help scientists everywhere in the entire world. I find that very rewarding. And that's what this Broodminder technology does. And if you want more information, please go see their website. This is, these are the sensors that Broodminder provides. So they have a temperature sensor, they have a temperature and humidity sensor, and then they've got some scales, and they've got bundled products and pricing and specials and such going on. I just recommend you go to broodminder.com if you're interested. I am only going to talk about what I have experience with. There's all sorts of people that know other things better than I do, and I'm not going to talk about those things, just what I have used. So this is what I use here. This is the sensor, and this is my hive called Bandit. And right here is the sensor that is inside this hive. And this is a deep and a couple of mediums here. I have 24 colonies, and I have 24 of these sensors, and they are always placed in the exact same spot in all of my colonies. And the advantage is I can compare across colonies. So no matter how many boxes are piled up on top, I always can compare colony to colony, regardless of where the sensor is located. Now, I will say, I realize this, 24 of these times 30, if you do the math, it's a little bit of money. I do want to say I am a very thrifty beekeeper. I make as much of my equipment as I can. I buy used equipment and sanitize the heck out of it. I'm scraping frames like nobody's business all the time. So I think you can see that there's some value, at least for me, in the use of these, which is why I'm here to share with you, hoping that there's some value in it for you. Now, how this application works, this is how the Broodminder data works. And I'm going to show you the competitors as well. They have a bunch, but here's how this whole thing hangs together. So here's Bandit Hive again, and there's the little sensor in there right above the brood chamber in the bottom deep. So the sensor itself holds a rolling 1 year of temperature data. And I walk up to it with my smartphone and I sync it using Bluetooth. And I get a graph instantly on my phone, and I can take action right away if I see something that needs attention. Then when I get back into cell range or on Wi-Fi, my colonies are all spaced super far apart and nowhere near Wi-Fi. And in fact, we don't even have cell range. So I can't do it, I can't get any communication when I'm at the hive. So I have to wait till I get back to my house. And then it auto syncs up to Broodminder where I can analyze it. It also pushes to the citizen science website I told you about, and also to an analysis site called Melosphere. And that's how this this technology works. But the technology is not the cool part. The cool part is what you can do with this, which I'm trying to get through this so I can show you the examples here as quick as possible. All right, so I said there are other precision beekeeping providers, and there absolutely are. I researched a couple of these. I strongly recommend you investigate for yourself. The fact that I'm using one doesn't mean you should use it necessarily. You should decide for yourself. But there are other ones. This is one. There's the sensor down here. This is a different one. The sensor hangs here. You can go check these out. I'm sure Jake will provide you with this slide and this data so that you can go have a good look at it your own self and pick for yourself if you're interested in this. So there's a lot of common questions that we all have as beekeepers, and I'm going to show you 11 examples that answer pretty much every one of these questions. So regarding queen laying in the presence of brood, we always want to know all the time, is the colony queen right? This is the lifeblood of a healthy, thriving colony. There needs to be a laying queen and we need brood. Swarming, has the colony swarmed? Varroa treatments, how often have we done a Varroa treatment and we want to know, how is it affecting my colony? Is it okay? Did I kill my queen? Was it too harsh? Beekeeper actions, all the time I ask myself, is what I'm doing supporting healthy, productive bees, or am I being disruptive and increasing colony stress? Stressors, how often have we wondered, is there a skunk or somebody visiting my hive? Look at these bite marks. I'm going to show you an example of how these sensors can help you, if not answer the questions, definitely give you a tip off of what is going on. All right, let me stop here. And Jake, let me see if there are any questions so far before I get into these 11 examples.
I'm here. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. Don's question was, how long before the swarming do you see the warm up occur?
Right. Just as they're colony.
Okay, so pretty much immediate. All right. Any other questions at this time in here? No questions in this room. No questions on the internet. So I think we are good to continue, Theresa. You go right ahead.
All righty. All right. So we're going to run through 11 examples of using this technology to help us basically manage our bees better. And every one of these 11 is going to follow the same format. So I'm going to run through and explain this one. And then the next 10 will go much faster. So this first example, this is Quiet Hive. It's one of my colonies. And this example number 1 is 2 years of queen laying. That's what I'm going to show here. This is the graph that you get from the mybroodminder.com. This is their website. And the way these graphs run is down along the bottom is always time. So this one, being 2 years of queen laying, runs from May of the year 2019 through March of 2021. This light pink up and down line here is the outside temperature. So this comes off of a weather station and it's configurable. This is the airport that's closest to my house that generates this light pink line. This dark pink line is the sensor that I mentioned that is inside the hive and sitting right above the bottom deep. That's this pink line. These little tiny bubbles down here are notes. So this Broodminder technology lets me enter notes about things that I have done or things that I have observed. We're not going to go over what those notes are, but that's what that is. And then this gray bar right here, that is the brood zone, 92 to 98 degrees Fahrenheit. That's when the bees are raising brood and the queen is essentially laying. And then this spring, summer, fall, winter, this I put in here to kind of help you follow along. So that's how these graphs run. Oh, and then on the y-axis, I should have said this is temperature in Fahrenheit. So you can see 25, 50, 75, 100. All right, so let's run through this example and then it'll make probably more sense. All right, so Quiet Hive was a swarm that I caught in a swarm trap, and it was a brand new colony in May, and I hived it in a deep on bare foundation, so it was undrawn comb. So what you can see here is, despite the outside temperature here dropping down into the 60s, you can see the up and down here, but you see this slope. These girls, the workers, are starting to move, and the queen is starting to lay, and they are moving in the right direction up into the brood zone. Then June through September, the queen is laying. This is nice and flat, and it's a good sign you've got brood. The queen is laying, all is well. And remember what I said about queen laying being a proxy for the presence of brood. Then in October comes along, it's fall, the queen, she stops laying, and the workers stop regulating the temperature inside the colony. There is no reason for them to expend the calories, the resources, and the energy to maintain the temperature up into the brood zone, and it drops out. In January, she right here is the likely time that the queen started laying again, right here at this peak. And the reason we can tell this is because you see the outside temperatures being so low. We're down here less than 25 degrees. And yet the bees are maintaining this huge gap in temperature. We're up in the 80s. They're holding that temperature warm because they've got brood in here. And you can also kind of just see the general climb here. March through September, we again have queen laying. October comes along, she stops laying again. And January she kicks it up again. The workers start regulating the brood nest, and off they go into yet another year of being bees. All right, questions about this graph and the data and what it indicates?
Don says you're going to get some variability.
So you're going to get some variability based on where that sensor is located and where the brood nest is. So for instance, if the bees move up during the winter to their honey stores, and then as spring starts to come, they may stay up there and start their brood nest up in that box above, but the temperature monitor is still down low. So you're not getting exactly the brood temperature, but you know that they're raising brood because you see that spike, which causes the whole hive to warm up.
Don, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that is the purpose of putting the sensor always in the same spot. So you're going to see in a couple of slides, I can compare colony to colony and I will see variation. And you're right, it's not exact. Now, there are things you can do to get even more data. I used to have, before I had 24 colonies, I had multiple sensors per colony. So I would put one above the first deep and maybe one above the second deep. I know a researcher, he's got 9 sensors in a colony. So there's ways you can watch the brood nest change. When I had 2 sensors, I could literally watch the brood nest in the winter, and I could watch, I should say, the cluster move during the winter. So everything you said is absolutely correct. And the way you said it is well stated also. All right, moving right along. Resolving a queen loss. All right, so this is Bailey hive. And this is a different time frame. So here we are in summer. So this is this past summer of 2021. We're in July. We're looking at July through August. So this is a little bigger resolution of the time. And again, we still have temperature here and we've got the brood zone. So on June 17th, I do an inspection of Bailey hive and it's doing great. It's the colony is healthy, it's strong, it's queen right, no sign of diseases. Thermal regulation is tight in the brood zone. And again, to Don's point, you're going to see variation here, depending on where the sensor is, depending on where the bees are, depending on how many bees, et cetera. But you can see this is looking good. Here's the outside temperature up and down. You know, it's hot, it's July, and it's moving right along. And I'm every once in a while, I walk up to the hive. I've got life going on. I'm doing all sorts of stuff, and I'm brood minding as I go here, as time goes on. And somewhere in here, I walk up and I run my little syncing on my phone, and I see this going on. And I know something is off. The colony is gradually stopped. It's stopped. It's no longer regulating the temperature. And I know this is mid-July. This should not be happening. And not only that, but I can compare this to my other colonies. And I know this is too much variation to be just, you know, the brood has moved. I know this is not right. So of course, despite being busy and having, at this time, I think I had, you know, maybe 20 colonies, something like that, I know to make it a priority to inspect daily. So I get in here and sure enough, it's queenless. There's no sign of a laying queen in here. There's also no sign that it's swarmed and that I've got a virgin queen, and I'll show you the swarming indicators later, but there's no reason to think that I've got a virgin queen in here and that that's the problem. And I have no idea what happened to her. I don't know what happened, but I know I got to fix it before I end up with laying workers or, you know, just bad things happen, right, when it's queenless. So what I do is I had just recently caught a small but queen right swarm. So it's July, it's a late season swarm, and I had just caught it, and it's in a deep off somewhere else. And so I do a newspaper combine. I pull off the top box, maybe the second one. I think it was just the top one. And I do a newspaper combine with this little tiny swarm on top here. And then I watch the brood minder, and I am not liking this here. I'm like, that's not right. I wanted to see it start leveling off. It doesn't. So I go ahead, and it's been long enough. They chewed through the newspaper. So I remove that extra deep and I do the collapse. I move the brood that was up in that swarm down, and I combine it down into this deep here. And lo and behold, as soon as I get out of the hive, it goes queen right. That is an example of using this sensor to kind of detect that you got a problem, tips you off, you get in, and then you can watch from the outside. And sure, you can certainly get in there and verify that what you think you did actually worked. But the broodminder tells you pretty sure it worked well. Oh, and then I ended up harvesting honey off these girls later this summer. All right, any questions on example number 2?
Yes, Chuck just commented that this system lets you kind of bypass checking every hive in the yard and go straight to your trouble children. Pat May has asked if you had any evidence of them trying to make a queen cell. Let me unmute it so we can hear your response.
Not that I saw. No, there was no evidence of them making a queen. And I wish I knew. I wish I knew how'd they go queenless. I don't think I killed her. The timing is not correct. You know, there was far longer than 21 days between when I was in and when they started dropping out of the brood zone. I don't know. I don't know. I wish I did, but I don't. And there was no sign that they had started making a queen, or maybe they made one and she didn't come back, mated. I don't know. Yeah, no idea.
I actually have a question from that myself. Did you have any open brood when you got in there? Do you recall if there's any open brood at that time?
No, there was no open brood. There was only capped brood by this time, if I'm not mistaken, recalling this event.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Please continue.
All right, let's move on. Let's do not spotting a queen loss. So I got this example from Broodminder. I didn't have a good one, and I thought this was interesting. So let me go ahead and throw this up here. So Broodminder provided this. A beekeeper did an inspection and accidentally killed the queen right here. And you can see this spike here. You do often get this spike when you do an inspection, because you're opening it and you're letting all their heat out and you're riling up the bees. So there's your inspection event. Then the colony continued to regulate the temperature. It's literally, I think, to the day, 21 days after the death of the queen. And then it drops like a rock out of the brood zone. And then here it is, all wonky is what I call this. The brood is no longer regulating the temperature inside the colony. Now, my guess is this beekeeper, he or she did not know they killed the queen until after they saw this. And I don't know why this graph does not have the outside temperature. I just always like to see that. But this I thought was a good example. I've not seen this. I've seen it drop out more gradually than this, but this is an example of a really clear queen died, 21 days, they regulate the brood nest and it drops. All right, this is a fun one. And this is my last one related to brood rearing and queenlessness. So this is another one of my hives called West Hive. All right, and this is a different time frame. This was March of 2021, so just this past very early spring. All right, so here we go. So this is spring. We're coming out of spring, and something is off. I could tell this curve was wrong. It just didn't match what was happening on my other. Now, this was 17. I had 17 of 17 colonies this past spring and winter that overwintered. So I had a lot to compare, and I just knew something was off. It didn't look queenless to me, but it just didn't look right. So I do an inspection. That's what this little 7 is here. And I did it on a warm day. You can see the outside temperature was pushing into the 70s. And I do an inspection, and sure enough, it's queenless. And not only that, but it's got laying workers. Well, I've never had laying workers before. And I thought, well, this should be interesting. I'm going to see what this is all about. So I go research laying workers. I go to Rusty Burlew. She's a honeybee sweet. She's kind of my go-to. And I learn her idea of how to fix laying workers. So she's very much biology and science focused, and she explains that open worker brood is needed to suppress laying workers' ovaries. So the multiple laying workers in there, the way their ovaries develop is due to lack. It happens when there's lack of open worker brood pheromone, and certainly queen pheromone are lacking, which allows their ovaries to develop. So the way you reverse it, the most reliable way, is add frames of open worker brood to suppress the laying workers. You're going to have to add it multiple times over a time period to shut those workers' ovaries down. So I say, all right, I'm going to try this. And I've got the 17 hives, so I've got the resources to do it. And I decide I'm going to give this a shot. And it's also spring. So I've got hives that are busting and could probably use, the opportunity to have their brood nest opened up a bit. So 4 times I add frames from 4 different hives: Sunset, Tolly, Pond, and Bailey. And I add them, I think it's like 5 days apart here. No, it was actually 7 days apart, 1 week apart. And each time these frames have not only this open worker brood on it, but it's got a little bit of cat brood. And I also put in the nurse bees. All right, so here, this is the cool part is what happens in the graph. Oh, and I wanted to show you this. So notice this isn't looking so great right here because I know it from the others, but this is bad. When you see the internal temperature of your colony below the outside temperature, they're not even trying anymore. They're on their way out. So I give them a shot. I add 2 frames from the get-go from this hive called Sunset, and this shoots up here. They've got brood. I gave them a shot of nurse bees, and here they are. This is far better. And look at how much flatter it is, and it's higher than this kind of wonky up and down here that's basically mirroring the outside temperature and not even doing real well with it. But then it starts dropping off, and then I give them the next frame, and it shoots up, and it actually hit the brood zone. And then I give them the next frame and it shoots up and it's almost leveling out. And then I add the final frame and then I decide I'm done. That's 4 frames. I've given them a lot. I've taken from these other hives. They're either going to make a queen or they're not. And they're either going to make it or they're not. And lo and behold, they go queen right somewhere in here. And somewhere back here, they made themselves a queen. Now I tried, and you guys probably may be able to figure it out. I don't know which frame, I don't know if the queen was made from Sunset, Tully Pond, or Bailey. I don't know. There were 3 queen cells, but this is not enough time to have used one of those queen cells. They do go queen right, and I do end up harvesting honey off this hive later that summer. All right. Okay, swarm detection. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. So as I mentioned in my introduction, I'm more of a natural beekeeper. I don't do any swarm prevention. I let my bees swarm. I know that is not conventional and may not be the way you all keep bees, but it is the way I keep bees. I work hard to catch my swarms. And in fact, this last year on the 17, coming out of this spring on the 17 hives, I caught 22 swarms off my own hives. I sold 16 of them. Let's see, I kept 3, including off of this hive, which is a treatment-free hive. And I used the other 3 as sources of queens. They were the small ones, and I used them for to resolve queenless hives. But nonetheless, that's what I do is I allow my bees to swarm. Now, even if you don't, you still may find value in what I'm able to share with you. So go back to what I said in the very early slides. There is a pre-swarm 4-degree Fahrenheit temperature spike thought to be the departing bees warming up their flight muscles. So we can use that. And here is, and this is actually 2020. It was just a better graph, but this hive also swarmed nicely in 2021 too, this treatment-free hive. Oh, and I should say it's treatment-free. I have 2 of these. The only reason they're treatment-free is because they've never exceeded thresholds. I am not a treatment-free beekeeper. I sure wish I was, but I'm not. And I'm going to show you some treatment slides here in just a second. But anyway, let's get back to the graph. So this is swarm number 1. It was a primary swarm with a mated queen. It went high in a tree and I couldn't catch it. And there it is. There, Don asked about the spike. It is literally right before the swarm exits the hive. It's cast and it, bivouacs. Right then is when you get that little tiny spike. But that is extremely visible. When you walk up with your phone and you sync it, you can see that it is very obvious. And then it swarmed 2 more times, and the timing of when this after swarm kicked off, this one here, and then this one is exactly what you read about in like Honeybee Democracy or The Lies of Bees. It's pretty fascinating. So this one was an after swarm. I caught this one. This one was an after swarm. I caught this one, Virgin Queens. Now, what I want to explain about this is I don't know about you and swarming, but what happens to me probably half the time, I'm afraid to admit it, but I will literally walk up to my colonies. Oh, and my colonies are spread super far apart, and Jake's seen a map of this, but I'll walk up to my colony and I'll look at the entrance and I'll look around in the trees and I'll say, these girls didn't swarm. Everything looks great. That entrance looks just like it did last time it was here. And then I run my little brood minder and I see this spike, and it's like an hour before I'm standing there, that little spike. And then I look again and I'll find that swarm. It's crazy silly how often that happens to me. What I would offer for y'all is I'm thinking I'm pretty sure our hives, our colonies are swarming, even if we're doing swarm prevention, probably more frequently than maybe what we realize. Seeley says in his research that in a natural cavity, a colony that casts a primary swarm, 70% of the time will later cast an after swarm. And sometimes these are small and they're not that easy to spot. And I have a feeling our colonies are swarming much more often than maybe what we see. And then this is just a picture. There's a couple of virgin queens and there's a worker and a drone that I was like sitting right outside the colony after they had thrown their last after swarm. And the last virgin queen, she kicked out the other one. So that's all that is. I just thought that was a fun picture. All right, what questions do you guys have about this data here?
Totally agree with her.
Don agrees with you on what you're seeing. It's a fascinating data set, especially the secondary swarms right on time. But no other questions have come in, so feel free to continue.
All right, let's move off of something that I think is super fun, which is swarming, to something I don't think is fun at all, is varroa mite treatment. All right, but here we have it. We can learn some stuff from our temperature sensors and the broodminder here related to this. All right, so as I said, unfortunately, I am not a treatment-free beekeeper. I really wish I was, but I'm not. I do use the so-called organics, Formic Pro, Apiguard, and oxalic acid vaporization. And I'm going to show you 3 graphs of the impact and what we can learn from the temperature data as it relates to these treatments. All right, so this is Gate Hive, and we're in summer here. And this is Bees Hive, and we're also in summer a little earlier. All right, this is Formic Pro treatment. So I, in this case, used Formic Pro, the 2-strip 14-day treatment back in 2019 here on Gate Hive. And I put the treatment in right here when the temperatures were going to be cool for the first 3 days of application. So I'm always super careful to try and time it. And you can see I did a pretty good job. It's below the 80s and it even dropped almost into the 70s on the 3rd day. Yet Formic Pro, being as harsh as even the literature says, you can see how hard it was for the bees to try and even regulate the temperature. This up and down here is significant. And again, to Dawn's point, this up and down here has to do with where the sensor is and where the brood is in the hive, but this is nice. This is regulated. There's nothing wrong with this. This is showing the stress and the challenge that the bees had. And it's almost 14 days before they pull out of it. And we know again here, if we go out 21 days, that we didn't kill the queen with the Formic Pro treatment, which it has, especially depending on the temperature, it can possibly do that. And then here it starts kind of getting a little bit lower, but we're heading into a winter here or fall. So this is pretty normal. This is Apiguard. This is a different hive called Bees Hive. Again, 3 days of cool temperatures right after the application. You can see it's still, the bees struggle a bit, but they recover quicker. Now they're still up and down here versus where they started. And I'm not honestly sure why that profile happened, but it's just simply not as severe or significant an impact as with Formic Pro. Let me show you the oxalic acid vaporization one, and then we can take some questions. So this was a hive, it's called Kingsley Hive. My friend said, I don't want to be in bees anymore. And he said, you take my bees. And he gave them to me on August 25th of 2019. So late in the season. And these girls were so varroa mite infested. I never seen so many varroa mites. This is a 24-hour natural drop. This is a natural drop of mites. Every one of those little black things in 24 hours, that's what was dropping out. So I said, all right, these girls are going to either, I'm going to have to hit them with the kitchen sink or they're going to die anyway. So I oxalic acid vaporize them 3 times, 5 days apart, to try and hit as many of these mites. And then later, I think I even put Apiguard in this colony later on. But you can see the profile that oxalic acid, now it's a single hit. It's not like Formic that stays in the hive or Apogard that stays in the hive, it's a hit and then it's pretty much out of the hive. The researchers think within hours, at most days, it's all dissipated out of the hive. So it's not as severe. Now, I don't want to imply that this acid that we're vaporizing inside here has no impact. Research shows that it does burn their trachea, the pads of their feet, it burns off their antennas, especially repeated. Don't forget your queen is getting hit multiple times with this stuff. I'm not implying or trying to say that it is benign. I'm not trying to say that at all. I'm just saying the temperature profile is dramatically different than what you're getting with Formic Pro and with Apogard. And I will also offer that I'm only showing you, 3 examples, one of each, Formic, Apogard, and this one, but I've seen this repeatedly on my hives. Formic Pro tends to be more harsh, Apogard less so, and then of course the oxalic acid. And then just to clear the varroa mite treatment impact piece, I always want to say this whenever I talk about this topic. Please read the Honey Bee Health Coalition Guide to Varroa Management. It's the best resource out there for all things varroa management, including the IPM and the physical and environmental options. Don't forget, the label is the law. Wear your PPE. And then this broodminder data, really, just to sum it up, it supports the literature already that states Formic Pro is harsh on queens and colony. Be sure to use it when the outside temperatures are cool. I've moved from the 2-strip 14-day option to the 1-strip 10-day, 1-strip 10-day option. Oliver's got some new work out there, if you haven't read it, on in 2021 in ABJ on the effectiveness of this approach, et cetera. So let me stop there. What questions do you have about varroa mite treatment and the graphs and the impact?
Well, just for starters, Formic Pro and Apogard, both of those are known for causing brood rearing problems. Formic Pro can cause brood loss, especially if you go outside of temperature controls. And Apogard can cause queens to stop laying more or less. So it's kind of interesting to see those play out. Does anyone else have any questions along these lines on these slides?
Which ones she uses?
Do you alternate which treatments you use in your apiary?
Yes. Yes, I do. And I also, my colonies are spread really far apart. I live on a farm. And so one of the Tom Seeley natural beekeeping methods is to space them as far apart as possible. So I don't actually have apiaries per se. So I treat individual hives with rotating products, and only when that individual hive has exceeded thresholds. And in general, what I would say is that I have some hives, some colonies, I should say, that have never been treated, some that get 1 treatment, some get 2, some get 3. And I try really hard to always, rotate. If an individual hive has had Apogard that year or earlier, then I'll try Formic if I can, and et cetera. So yes, I rotate treatments, and I follow the guidelines through the Honeybee Health Coalition guide as closely as I can. Examples 7 and 8 deal with the activity of when we beekeepers do things. Are they adding value? Are they making a difference? Or are we causing stress or whatnot? So winterizing a strong colony, and then example 8 is going to be winterizing a weak colony. So this is the strong colony. This is Tower Hive. It's a strong colony, and we can tell it's strong because we're here in October. This is just this year, and it's still nice and flatlined here. It's up and down, and it's starting to get a little cooler, but we can tell this colony is a strong. It's doing well. So I winterize. I kind of winterize the heck out of my colonies. All 24 get this winterizing regime. So it is a bunch of stuff. I reduce the entrance with a block of wood down here. I add a mouse guard. I add 2.5 inches of foam insulation under the telescoping cover. This is 1.5 inch of insulation goes all around the sides. I add right from the get-go 3 pounds of sugar. I just put it on right at the beginning, a quilt box. It's got 5 inches of pine chips. I close off the screened bottom, and there is 0 upper ventilation. And I send all my colonies into winter with this winterizing. And I oftentimes ask myself, gosh, this is a heck of a lot of work, 24 colonies. I feel like I'm out there slogging through this. And I often wonder, am I making a difference? Is this even worth it? And it turns out it is. So this is the day on this hive that I did this work, and I did it all at once. There is a 7-degree Fahrenheit increase in temperature on the day I do this work. And this effort, as much as it is, provides continuous ongoing benefit 24 hours per day for the next 5 months. I don't do anything more except add sugar if they run out. And I send my colonies into winter. I try and send them all in. I try and have them at 140 total pounds. So they're not light. They should be fine. There's no doubt about it. But I'm following natural beekeeping, trying to mimic the bee tree as best I can and give these girls the best over winter experience so they come out strong and not cold stressed and da. And this is what the data says. Now, I do not see quite this dramatic an increase on all of my colonies. And I was talking to Jake about this. The less noise in the data is kind of how Jake explained it, is why you can detect this. If this was already an up and down graph, it'd be harder to see. This one just seemed to depict it best. So before I take questions on this, let me show you the impact of winterizing a weak colony in example number 8. So this is another set of rescue bees. You're probably getting a trend, seeing the trend here. So this is a set of bees that a beekeeper called me on November the 1st and said, I have some bees, and they were my bees that I had sold him earlier. And he had even invested in Broodminder. And he said, I don't want to do bees anymore. He had kind of a bad experience, and I just don't think he liked bees. But anyway, he calls me and says, I don't want these bees, please come get them. And I paid him some money, and I went and got these rescue bees. I bring them home and I weigh them, this colony, and the whole thing, it's a deep, it's a double deep 10 frame. And the whole thing, the poor thing only weighed 60 pounds total, the whole thing. It had nothing. And I do an inspection, there's nothing in it except the bees and some drawn comb. Luckily they had drawn comb, and it is mite infested, which is why I didn't do a combined. But anyway, all right, so let's look at this one. I winterize this one. So, but first, this is when I get them right here at this little mark right here. It's when I went and got them. This is poor thermoregulation and trending worse. So here's the inside. This up and down is not good. And here's also why it's bad. You see this down slope right here on the temperature inside the colony? The outside temperature was on an upslope at the same exact time. These girls they're heading for trouble. And I do want to show you, this is November the 4th through November the 7th. And you see this up and down. Let me go back. This happens to be the same November the 4th through November the 7th. Look at the difference in the thermoregulation for this strong hive right here, flatlined like that, same exact time, same exact weather conditions. And look at this. This is not good. These girls are heading for trouble. All right, poor thermoregulation and trending worse. I get the bees, I go get them. I get some friends. We haul them home and I set them up, and I weigh them, and I immediately throw some syrup on them. And I reduce the entrance, add the mouse guard, close off the bottom screen, and already there's a little bit of improvement on the very first day. This is better. At least it's not continuing to decline. At least it looks like it's trying to turn. Then I keep feeding them syrup. The next day I go out and I do the insulation. I insulate everything I can while I'm still feeding with all this foam. And I even can slip 1 inch of foam underneath these girls because of the way this bottom board is set up. And it's doing better. They're at least turned. They're turning the curve, and I load them up. I know there's 3 days of temperatures that's going to be in the 70s. I load these girls up as hard as I can with 2-to-1 syrup. I think they take 2.5 gallons in 3 days. They are so hungry. So then the cold temperatures are coming back, and I know they can't dehydrate any more syrup. I know they can't even take it when the syrup itself gets below 57. So I remove it. I add the sugar patties, the quilt box, I even throw this sad looking black garbage bag on here for solar gain. It's the only thing I can think of. And it's looking better. At least it's not this wonky up and down. This is a better thermal regulation. I OAV them here because of the mites. There's no brood in here anyway. I OAV them. I wished in hindsight I would have OAV'd them back here when it was warmer, because it's a little cool to be putting OAV in them. It's not bad, but it would have been better back here when it was warmer and they were way less clustered. And then this is better thermal regulation. So this is not great. And these girls may still die. I don't know. My money's on them. I'm hoping they're going to live. But at least this curve is better than this. Questions on winterizing and the use of this data to try and understand if your actions, my actions, are making a difference? Any questions on example 7 or 8?
Any questions from the floor? Yes, Carrie.
Vents, there's no vents.
Do you use any vents on these hives besides your entrance?
No, there's no upper ventilation whatsoever. And there's a good study out there. Mitchell is his last name. And I can get the link to Jake. He's probably read it. That shows that there's negative impact of upper ventilation for a colony that is insulated, that when the top is heavily insulated. And he did some recent research on that. And also I've got the quilt box on that can and will capture any moisture if there is any. So no, there's zero upper ventilation. I don't let the heat out the top. It all just goes right out that hole in the top. So no.
No other questions. Go ahead and continue.
All right. We've only got 3 more examples. All right. This one is predator stress. All right. This was kind of fun. This is called tadpole. All right. So tadpole, I walk by the hive. It's middle of the winter 2020. This is last year. I walk by the hive on January 12th and I sync my brood minder, and I noted my bee journal all is normal. I really literally wrote that in there. Everything looks fine. Yeah. And nothing strange going on. So then I walk by my colony, the same hive, on January 18th, and I see bite marks all along the insulation. There's a little bee, she's going in, but somebody's been munching or trying to munch on my bees. So I, of course, sync the brood minder here on January 18th, and I look back at this graph, and what I see is a single disturbance on January 16th at 10 o'clock p.m. right here. This little spike right here was very likely the little predator trying to scratch away at this hive and have some dinner. And it's probably a skunk, a raccoon, or a possum. But what's fascinating to me is there's no other event in here that indicates it was anything but a single occurrence. So I know there's no action needed, and all I got to do is monitor this using my brood minder and keep an eye on it. And lo and behold, nothing happens again. It was a single event. Now, had I not had the brood minder, I mean, I might have said, all right, I got to do something, you know, and there's all sorts of things you can do. You can put chicken wire around the colony. You can put the little carpet tacks in here and try and hurt their little, you know, their paws when they're smacking away at here trying to get the bees to come out so they can eat them. There's all sorts of things you can do. You can look for other signs too. There's no doubt about it. You know, how trampled is it? You can look for scat, da, 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 da. But you can also look at, you know, in this case, you can see it in the brood minder. Now, I will point out one other thing that's interesting is you may look at, well, what about this little peak right here? Or like this one right here, but that's different. See how that's during the day. See that right there? That's at noon. This one's like at 10 in the morning or some such thing. This is just the sun coming up, hitting the hive, you know, that type of thing. This is normal. There's one little one right here that you can see, but I don't know. That could have been a visit. I don't know that it was or that it wasn't. It's possible because that's in the middle of the night, but these are not anything. So this is an example of predator stress. Now, I'm not saying you're always going to get this when you've got a predator visiting, but if it's a serious enough impact, the bees will roar up. They will cause the temperature to increase, and you very often will get an indication that something has happened through the temperature event. Questions about this?
If your hives are close enough to your internet, is there an alarm that can let you know that that's happening?
Carrie is asking, I don't know if you could hear Carrie, asks if you can actually have alerts hit your phone if your brood minders are close enough to your connection for these kind of things.
Yes, you can. Yes, you absolutely can. And I have no experience with it because I don't have that situation, but absolutely. There's alerting on temperature events. You don't have to go out. Like a friend of mine, he's got a thing called a, I don't even know what it's called, but he's got a little thing that's basically a booster. So he never even has to visit his hives to sync his, and it does send out alerts. There's also alerts for swarms. So when that little spike happens for a swarm that's happening, you can get an alert and run out there and catch that swarm. If your colonies are close enough, or I don't even know. Again, I really only talk about what I know, but you may be, even if you're on cell signal, maybe you can get them that way. You'll have to check that out for yourself. But yeah, there's all sorts of things like that others can take advantage, like maybe beekeepers in the room listening that I can't take advantage of. Yes. Okay, let's do the last two examples. All right. Example 10 is a year in the life of the colony, and we're going to just kind of pull this all together. So this is Gate Hive. All right, Gate Hive, this is 2019 through 2020. This is a single year, but it just shows, I love looking at the ebb and flow of the colony behavior. So this was April. I created Gate Hive from a split. It was a double deep originally, and I can't do double deeps. I don't usually do splits, but I did in this case. And so I created a split from this double deep. And this was the queenless half. I knew which half had the queen in it. I made sure I knew. And so I knew this colony had to grow a new queen, and they do. And you can see, again, the same kind of profile that we saw before. May through August, we know the split was successful. The new queen, she emerged, she mated, she's laying, the colony is regulating the temperature all summer long. August comes along, and I do this 2-week formic mite treatment. It's harsh on the bees. The queen stops laying, and then she resumes. They continue to regulate the brood nest. Then October comes. The queen reduces laying, they're prepping for winter, it starts dropping out of the brood zone. All winter long, I can watch, and I know the colony is alive. Now, there's other ways we can tell. We can certainly listen, and all the different ways we can learn that our colonies are alive. but we can also tell from this brood minder, it's warmer inside the hive than the outside. And the way to tell is not from the highs, but from the lows. When you see the temperature dropping, this is down in the teens, and the temperature inside is warmer, like here and here, you know your colony is alive. If it's dead, unfortunately, you know, the inside is just gonna just almost be right smack on top of the outside temperature. So we know the colony is alive. Then there's some extended warm temps in January that the queen kicks it up. And again, the way we can tell is between the departure between the inside temp and the outside temp. When this is rising like this and this is falling like this, we know they're doing something. They're purposefully expending resources to increase the temperature. This is a huge gap in temperature. This is like 40 degrees or something, between almost 90 degrees here and down in the 30s. This is a big gap in temperature that they're maintaining. So they start laying and then they quit. Notice this drop right here. They stopped. They started, they kicked it up and they stopped. The queen starts laying again in February, and off they go into another spring, and they see dandelions again, and they've made it yet through another winter. A year in the life of a colony shown in the temperature profile of the inside of the colony. And let's do number 10, and then I'll stop and ask for any final questions. So this is Bee's Hive, and this is 3 years of learning and value. I kind of get nostalgic. Me and my girls, I mean, we've been through a lot together, and you know, this kind of broodminder thing has been helping me. And I have always, as I said, I've always had this technology, you know, and I've always been using this information to try and help me help my bees better. So this was one of the my early hives. I caught this as a swarm. It's called the Bee's Hive on May 27th of 2018. So this is off the graph. And I get my first brood minder, my first T2 temperature sensor on November 25th, 2018, and I install it. And what you've got here is basically 3 years of ebb and flow and following the seasons. Here we are in winter, this is summer, we go into fall, here's winter, there's spring, there's another summer, we go into fall, winter, spring, here's another summer. And here we are, November of 2021, and I am looking forward to seeing how these girls progress into 2022. All right, so let's wrap it up. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. I like that quote. It's Deming. He's the total quality guy, if you know him. Precision beekeeping provides insights into colony behavior. Without opening the hive, it improves understanding of queen laying, brood presence, swarming, beekeeper actions, stressors, and I feel it enables better decisions for healthier, more productive bees. It does not replace inspections. This is another one of my hives. And here are some resources that may be of value to you, including my contact information if you ever have any questions. There is a Facebook group, Jake is in it, called Beehive Monitoring, which is technology agnostic. It was created by Broodminder to bring all of the different types of precision beekeeping people and vendors together to understand how we can use this technology to help us be better beekeepers. This one right here, North of 60 Beekeeping. This is a gentleman up in Canada. His data, it makes me look like I'm in kindergarten. If you go look at his stuff, it's crazy the amount of engineering this guy is doing. I think he's got like 9 sensors or 36 sensors or something in his colonies. He's doing some really interesting research and he publishes it. And there's some more links to the Melosphere thing I talked about, and then this Be Counted, this citizen science website. I say thank you and I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to take any further questions.
Any questions left for anybody?
I'm on the, but these sensors have batteries in them, then how often do you have to replace them?
Pat asks what kind of batteries these sensors use and how frequently they require maintenance.
Yes, so I just turned on my video. Let me get out of this presentation. Let's see, is it gonna let me out? Well, so I'm trying to get out, I'm trying to get my video on, but it's basically the batteries inside the temperature sensor. They last for like 2 years, and they're just this little 3-volt battery that you can buy, and they last a really long time.
The battery lasts 3 years or the sensor lasts?
So the battery lasts 3 years or the sensor itself lasts 3 years?
Oh, the battery, I'm back on video. This is the battery, and it lasts for about 2 years before you have to change it. And I actually have one of these here, and I brought it in case. This is the battery slides in right here. This is the sensor, and it goes inside this sheath. And you can see this has got propolis all over it. This is one I pulled out of one of my colonies. And the sensor, I've never had one. I've never had one of my original ones break. And I've had them for 4 years. Now I have had them stop working, and they're under warranty, and Broodminder just sends you a new one. So they last a long time. Now these sheaths don't last super long. You can see eventually the bees propolize them. And you can see this one has some propolis on it. So, but the sensors, they last a long time. I'm not displeased with the length of time that I'm getting out of them.
Okay, Chuck asks if you're using the hub or individual strips for these hives.
So the hub is a communication device, and I don't actually know very well how it works, because again, that's not a technology that I can use. These strips, this is the temperature sensor. That's all this thing is it's the strip that goes inside the hive that captures the temperature data. It stores it here. It is synced using Bluetooth to your phone, and then that's uploaded to mybroodminder.com. The hub is just part of the communication, and you can use the hub, as I understand it, if your hives are close to your Wi-Fi, that type of thing. That's what the hub is for. But it's not one of the sensors per se. It's not capturing the temperature data. You need one of these to be inside the colony to actually capture the temperature readings from inside the colony.
A question on the floor, is there a cost associated with the app?
No, the app is free. They have a premium offering, but truth is, I would not recommend it. I think the free version of the Broodminder, mybroodminder.com is just great and good. So I would not recommend buying the premium version. I just wouldn't. So yeah, it's free.
I saw this question pop up and I don't know the answer. It asked, do you use only the temperature sensors or the other ones that are available? I'll let you go ahead and fill in what all is available out there.
Yep. So I just use the temperature sensor, the $30 version. The $60 version is has temperature and humidity. I do have one of them, but I don't find the value in understanding the humidity. The bees just seem to regulate the humidity regardless of what's going on. I'm just not finding the value for the spend. And I will say this too, Broodminder, because I've been using their technology pretty much. I was like one of the early GoFundMe people, and I bought them when they very first came out. They came out with the temperature only sensor, and it's cheaper. because I don't think them or the researchers or beekeepers were finding enough value in the humidity. Now, again, it depends on maybe if you're doing some research, like if you're doing Varroa research, and we know Varroa mites are sensitive to humidity and their ability to reproduce and stuff, then maybe you would want to purchase the humidity sensor as well. But I just personally have not found the value, and I recognize that Broodminder apparently didn't see as much value or saw a market for just the temperature sensor, which is why they came out with that one after the temperature and humidity sensor.
Theresa, it looks like you've answered every question we have had come in. I want to thank you for your time tonight.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.